Many of the recent protests in downtown LA have seen law enforcement officers using so-called less than lethal measures to disperse crowds they say are getting out of hand. As the number of protests grow, so does the public scrutiny of the response. And Al-Barian spoke to one person who was injured at a demonstration, as well as the chief of the LAPD.
Yeah, so they said it basically impacted right here.
Leaning into his camera on this Zoom video, Miguel Mendoza describes his injuries.
They basically ended up telling me that they broke my nose on both sides. There was some acute fractures here around my cheekbone and right above my lip.
The Bay Area resident was visiting a friend in Los Angeles more than a week ago when protests erupted following a series of immigration enforcement raids. As the son of Latino immigrants, Miguel says he felt compelled to join a demonstration in downtown LA on Sunday.
I was taking pictures, videos, captured some cool moments. And when I say cool moments, I mean just like the flag and then like to the cops behind us to share on social media. And then I just basically got hit.
Miguel says he was hit in the face with a less than lethal projectile, likely a rubber bullet fired by LAPD, as officers attempted to clear the crowd. Pictures and videos show the bloody aftermath in the emergency room, where Miguel says he got 7 stitches in his upper lip and mouth.
It was painful for sure. I think the adrenaline, the shock, I mean, it still is painful, like to eat. Like I still can't have solid foods without pain.
Miguel is now among a group of protesters who are speaking out about LAPD's crowd control tactics during these anti-ICE protests. Cell phone video and footage from local journalists show LAPD using tear gas, batons, and less lethal munitions like rubber bullets as they declared unlawful assemblies over the last week. But some protesters claim they weren't given a clear or timely path to leave, accusing police of kettling them in before arresting or dispersing the crowd. We asked LAPD Chief Jim McDonnell about these tactics. He says officers are trained to follow strict protocols.
This thing goes on generally for an extended period of time. People are given multiple dispersal orders, given a path to be able to safely exit. That is facilitated by the officers on the scene.
According to LAPD's own documents, the use of 40mm foam rounds, otherwise known as rubber bullets, are prohibited in areas like the head, neck, throat, chest, and groin, or near vital organs. But Chief McDonnell says due to the dynamic nature of a fast-moving crowd, perfect aim isn't always possible.
Yeah, vital organs, we don't shoot at the head or any vital organs. But I mean, realistically, you're in a dynamic, violent environment. It's chaotic. The officers are moving. The people in the environment are moving.
For Miguel, the impact of his injuries go beyond physical pain, he says. As a content creator, he now worries about scarring and says this experience has left him shaken. His message to LAPD is to use more restraint.
Treat us how you would treat someone you know, that you love, a friend, a family, whoever that may be, someone you respect, that is protesting, that is exercising their right peacefully, and just treat us that way.
He's hoping LAPD will review their use of force policies, but that's something the police department says they always do.
Thank you, Anna Al-Barian. Today, the LAPD said it had made 575 arrests since Saturday, June 7th, in connection to protests about the increase in immigration enforcement. The charges include failure to disperse, resisting arrest, and violations of the curfew Mayor Karen Bass ordered last week. The department says 10 officers have been injured to date. Joining me now with more is LA City Attorney Hydee Feldstein Soto to discuss all of this. City Attorney Feldstein Soto, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Remarkable times, incredibly busy, especially for someone like you. I mean, you're thinking about these First Amendment rights for peaceful protests. You're also thinking about public safety. You're also thinking about LA's auspices and defending it in light of potential federal incursion.
You mean troops on our street? Yes, I'm thinking about all of those things.
These are all things you're thinking about. And I suppose just for people at home to understand what it is that the City Attorney's Office has authority over to prosecute, let's begin there and some of the prosecutions that you're already seeing.
I sound like a broken record sometimes, but I'm only responsible for the prosecution of misdemeanors committed by adults within the city limits of Los Angeles on a criminal level. So if it's a suspect under the age of 18, that's not my jurisdiction. If it's a felony, it's not my jurisdiction. That will go to the DA or the U.S. Attorney. Yeah,
and you were just, you and I were just speaking about this idea of, for instance, you said someone throws a Molotov cocktail. Obviously, that's not a misdemeanor, but that would be the jurisdiction of the U.S. Attorney.
It could go to the U.S. Attorney or the District Attorney. There is usually a memorandum of referral or understanding between the various law enforcement offices. And when it is something as serious as a Molotov cocktail or a deadly weapon against a peace officer, that can go federal to the U.S. Attorney.
So we've been seeing these arrests of curfew violations and other sorts of things. What kinds of prosecutions have you brought so far? Any charges filed?
We've brought 14 prosecutions from the referrals that have been sent to our office. Of those 575 arrests, I'm not sure how many came to my office. I think something in excess of 20. We prosecute misdemeanors when we have sufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime was committed by a particular individual. Almost all of the cases that we have brought involve something other than standing on a sidewalk and protesting and failing to disperse. It usually involves violence.
Violence in some of these cases, destruction of property as well, right? Some of these businesses have been saying they're losing wages, revenue, and of course they're experiencing some damage and destruction to their properties.
The businesses in downtown Los Angeles have been hit doubly. Because yes, they've been hit by all of the defacement of their property and the theft of goods and the looting. They've also been hit by the curfew. Yeah. Because many of the businesses don't see the usual traffic that they have. Yeah. And so from my perspective, it's incredibly important not only to bring order back to the center of the city, but to ensure that there are consequences for those who would use peaceful protest as a cover to commit violent acts.
And of course, some of these businesses are also saying some of their workers aren't showing up for work or they're being detained, and that's a whole other conversation.
People
about
are terrified.
Yes.
I mean, people are really afraid, and this has come down on our city like a ton of bricks. Yeah. Okay, the cinder block that was placed around the city was wrong. The actions of the federal government in this case are also wrong.
Well, another thing that's come down on this government are these 4,000 federalized National Guard troops and 700 Marines. And you have filed this amicus brief in support of California's litigation against the Trump administration now in the Ninth Circuit, basically saying that this control of the National Guard should be under Governor Gavin Newsom and the California and not President Trump's unlawful use of the National Guard. Let's talk about some of the different arguments here that you laid out in your brief, which include posse comitatus. People are talking a lot about that. 10th Amendment. People like the way it sounds, but it's serious business. Ultra vires, too, exceeding the presidential authority. I mean, just talk about some of these legal arguments you have.
At the end of the day, the way our system of government is laid out is that the military is an external-facing force. Their job is warfare. Their job is combat. Their job is one tool, kill, okay, or capture. But it isn't law enforcement. Law enforcement left to our local jurisdictions is a multifaceted approach. Certainly when it comes to the interstices between the First Amendment right to protest and the criminal element that comes under cover of a protest, our law enforcement is best trained to deal with that. We have longstanding relationships with organizers of peaceful protests. The LAPD knows how to manage this in a way that prioritizes de-escalation. I'm not telling you it always works. I am telling you that I trust our law enforcement officers to at least take a tool in their tool chest short of deadly force. Yeah. A lot of people talk about less lethals. Less lethals can do a lot of damage, but let's not forget that less lethals are a better alternative when an officer feels under threat than the deadly force of a firearm. Right.
You've argued ultra vires, which is essentially saying the president has exceeded his statutory authority in part that he's invoking under the Insurrection Act. And he's saying that this protest is not peaceful. And some of our viewers might be watching us have this conversation. They're saying, I've seen footage, and these protests don't seem peaceful to me. And therefore, the president was right to do what he needed to do under the Insurrection Act. How would you address that concern and that argument about ultra vires?
In brief. Yes. The city of Los Angeles covers nearly 500 square miles. Everything that you're seeing on the news with the fires and cars on fire and people on the streets acting violently is within 1 square mile of the Civic Center. Right. The population of the city of Los Angeles is approximately 4 million people and visitors, give or take, on any given day. Before this past Saturday, there were no more than a few hundred protesters out at any given point in time. I think one night it swelled to 2,000. But it's a very small percentage of the population. This past Saturday, where it was the No Kings protest day, the protesters exceeded 30,000. And what I will tell you is that the city was largely peaceful throughout the day. Yeah. The only incident that happened again was late in the afternoon, again downtown, in this 1 square mile. So in a city that's the size of ours, that's as varied as ours, that's as diverse and populated as ours, please don't judge the entire city by what happens around City Hall.
Yeah, well, you spoke about some of those less lethals, perhaps as employed by the National Guard, the Marines, et cetera, but also we brought up the No Kings protests. We saw some of these flashbangs, we saw some of these horses move in on some of these protesters there, and there is this conversation about some of these protesters that we've seen experiencing some injuries, potentially suing the LAPD for disdamage, unlawful use of force, unlawful detention, excessive use of force. You would be the default defense attorney for the LAPD should some of these lawsuits arise. I think you and I were discussing you haven't necessarily heard of any of these lawsuits yet. Doesn't mean they haven't happened yet. We'll have to see if they come to your desk. What kinds of risk assessment measures are you employing in advance in preparation for those potential lawsuits to get ahead of it, and what are you expecting?
I mean, we have a fairly well-established process. In the first instance, the Los Angeles Police Department itself investigates every single use of force by any one of its members. And so we have to let them do their internal investigation, and they produce an after-the-fact report. We, like anybody else, have seen some of the videos, and every time someone gets hurt, okay, I don't care who it is, whether it's a suspect, whether it's a bystander, whether it's a reporter, whether it's one of our officers, okay, my heart breaks a little bit. I wish we could live in a world where that kind of violence doesn't occur by advertence or inadvertence. In any given instance, we will look at it very carefully. We always try to settle claims that are fair where we are at fault, if the plaintiffs are reasonable in terms of the amount. And so, yes, it's my charter responsibility, if I can't settle a matter, to defend the city and its police department for all actions within policy. And
well-settled protocols are helpful because people can look those up and understand them. I appreciate the heartfelt response, Justice is Blind. You have a balancing act here, and you and I have spoken about this. Peaceful protests, yes, but also protecting public safety, and clearly you're thinking about all of it. Thanks for coming, sharing your thoughts. I know there's going to be much more to talk about with you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
City Attorney. Stay safe out there. Can I say one thing to your audience?
Please.
This is our city. We should not burn it. Please. At the end of the day, we're only hurting each other. We're hurting our small businesses, we're hurting our communities. And so I encourage everyone to exercise their First Amendment rights peacefully. Don't block freeways, don't throw Molotov cocktails, don't throw anything at a police officer, and stay safe.
Well, we love LA. We appreciate you coming on and having these conversations. City Attorney Hydee, Feldstein, Soto. Great to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. There we go. Much more to talk about when it comes to legality is what we're seeing tomorrow night. We'll have LADA Nathan Hochman talk a bit more about this. But as you can see here from a city standpoint, much to discuss with prosecutions and amicus briefs to the federal courts as well.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage. And click the subscribe button here. You can also download our app and watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.